Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast. We're bringing it to you during the heat wave of 2023. Hope you guys are fine and dandy out there. I'm your host, as always, Chad Porto. Joining me, as always, is the glorious one himself, Marcus Green. Marcus, how are you?
What's going on, everybody?
So this is going to be a full-on impact-only review. We're only talking about Slammiversary 2023 and the news and notes surrounding it. So if you were hoping that we'd talk more about the G1, early plug, I bet you that Marcus and his other crew over at the True Penny Show, TruePennyShow on Twitter, I bet you they're going to be covering the G1, so check them out. And if they're not,
Yes, sir.
they'll be checking out Gleet, and then Gleet might be even more up your alley than Impact. We'll be back next week for more wrestling content that's not specifically Impact related. But until then, this is the Impact version of the show. Maybe a little making an Impact return, at least for one night only, although we don't have a banner for it. I really need to update the one because we still have the Podbeam on it. We're not on Podbeam anymore, so that needs to change. Let's go through the previews, not the previews, the pre-show stuff, and then we'll talk about the main card stuff, and then we'll give our overall thoughts and opinions. We're going to be using ImpactWrestling.com for some fun photos. So if you want to check that out, you can. The opener for the pre-show is Jody Threat and the Death Dolls taking on the Shantaraj, or the Shantaraj. I have read the first one, which is, of course, Giselle Shaw, Savannah Evans, and Jay Vidal. It was a six-person tag. The Death Dolls ended up getting the win. Personally, I've not been a big Jessica Havoc fan since like 2012. Yeah, she's really declined in quality, and she's just not a very good worker anymore. Very slow, very plodding, very uninteresting, and personality-wise, she doesn't really pop. I would love to see Jody Threat and the former Rosemary Courtney Rush as a tag team going forward. I think they have a lot of similar energy. And the fact that Jody Threat came into this after her undefeated streak, I think, is pretty impressive because it shows you that they are still building up with her. And the fact that she lost her streak to Deanna Parazzo isn't something to shake a finger at. So, Marcus, any thoughts on the opener if you saw it? Because I know we don't always cover the pre-show stuff.
Yeah, it was fine. It did what it needed to do. Like you have, I guess even more so than you have not been a fan of Jessica Havoc really ever, and
Mm-hmm.
now, um, clearly not. Because I feel like the only thing she's in the matches for is to do a pounce, which is, you know, not impressive because we've seen, far better pounces. But yeah, it's one of those things where it like I said, did what it needed to do. It was a fine opener. Certainly didn't need to be on the show, so good decision there. And yeah,
The Pounce period, of course, made famous by Monty Brown. No Monty Brown tonight, although we have some individuals who had a nice night that maybe Monty would be proud of. Kenny King and Sheldon Jean. They came out for their match, or I should say Kenny's match against Joe Hendry for the Impact Digital Media Championship. And while I don't like the name of the belt, I am starting to appreciate its value within the company. It is specifically the TV pre-show belt. That is its job, and it's done a great job building up certain guys along the way. Specifically, Joe Hendry, and I shouldn't say the belt built up Joe Hendry, but Joe Hendry has brought a lot of value to the belt and made it something worth wanting. King gets the win off of a shoddy roll up where it was supposed to be a situation where he had his feet on the ropes, and Sheldon Jean was supposed to get his hands around his Kenny's feet, but he was a little bit late. Only got there right after two. The ending was a little clunky, but the match itself was pretty solid. Kenny's pushing 40, but he can still go, and I'm optimistic about Sheldon Jean. They ended up cutting a promo later on during the main show. And King is now calling the title the DMC. And he's referring to Joe Hendry as MySpace and Chris Sabin as Twitter because MySpace is old and no one really cares about it anymore. And Twitter's a mess, just like Sabin. I thought that was funny. And Sheldon Jean added some color to it with his
DMC.
yeah. And King's like, I like that. I like that. And like they're starting to
Yeah.
develop a very nice rapport, and I'm
Yeah.
appreciating that. So I'm really excited to see where Sheldon Jean and Kenny King go from here. They need a name, right? And I don't know what that name's going to be. Masha has already named. Let's see. Let's see if I can find her Twitter. Masha's already named her team with Killer Kelly, and I forget what it is, but it's something really good. I was really impressed. It's like, what the hell is it called? It's that mind control stuff that the CIA did in the 50s, MK Ultra, something like that. But it's not just MK Ultra, but it's like MK something, and I really liked that. Like it was a really, really chill name, but I completely forget what it was. I'm trying to see if I can't find it. It's just MK Ultra. Okay, I thought it was something more than that. And it's MK Ultra is ready to control your minds is the tweet, and that was actually from Killer Kelly. So that's a dope name. As far as the match goes, it was solid, nothing spectacular. But if you want to check it out, I would support that. Mark, any thoughts on Sheldon Jean? Oh, not Sheldon Jean. Kenny King getting the win over Joe Hendry and taking the title. Seems like we lost Marcus momentarily. So while that being said, we'll reconvene with Marcus here when he gets back, and we'll move on to the Ultimate X match. This was the show was I would say a half degree off center. You know, in terms of anything we talk about, it was a half degree off center. Never anything great, but never anything bad. But there were some things that you just were like, maybe we could have gotten more out of it. The lone exception, I would say, would be the Ultimate X match. There were some spots that didn't work, and a lot of them had to do with Kevin Knight. And I think a lot of that had to do with Kevin Knight being, you know, maybe I'm wrong when I say this. I don't think I am. I think this was his first big event he did with Impact. And it's probably his first Ultimate X match or anything even close to it. So nerves are, of course, going to play a thing. But the big story out of this, besides who won, was the fact that Jake Something returned to the company. It's not been made clear yet if Jake Something is sticking around long term. It'd be cool if he was. He's a great addition to the roster, and he's certainly something that I think could help people out. You know, in terms of bases for big high profile X Division matches like this. But I also think you can actually build him up into something legitimate and interesting. But that's going to take time. Because his first run was as Cody Deaner's cousin, and it wasn't great because Jake Something doesn't have the personality that Cody Deaner has, so there's some limitations there. As far as the Ultimate X match goes, Kushida won. Kevin Knight tried to do this move with Jake Something, but the move flopped, and they ended up rolling on the ground, but Something kept Knight in control and picked him back up and powerbombed him into the crowd, so that was pretty chill. But this was not the most dynamic of Ultimate X matches, and I think at the inclusion of Alan Angels and Kevin Knight kind of brought down the significance of this match, only because like neither man I think of as X Division champions or contenders or even on the roster most nights. So I thought that was a little bit odd. So there's that. I don't know when Marcus will be back. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Had to step away. Oh, Marcus, you're back.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But,
Marcus, real
yeah.
fast, before I get your opinion on the Ultimate X match, I want to rewind a second. What was your thought on Kenny King winning the DMC?
Yeah, shout out to King, man. Like I said, that match kicked off a theme of the show of I guess understandable effery, if you will. It just didn't feel like it was for no reason. We talked about it on the previous show when we did the predictions that while it stood to be a quality match because King can go and Hendry has just been brilliant. It was basically a handicap match, and that's what it came down to. And with the whole thing, everything leading up to it, and I think Hendry's Raw Digital Media Championship is the reason why I kind of turned around on the title. It's also a good aesthetically looking title too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've really turned around both on the title and Hendry because of that run, which proves its effectiveness to me. But yeah, King was great. And then the whole Kenny being a stripper thing, bringing that whole thing full circle, him wearing a bow tie, like it was good. It was good, and this was classic Dirty King fashion, and that aftermath promo I thought was great. But King rarely misses on the mic, and like you said, he's bonding with the young man with him, and it's gonna be fun in the upcoming weeks seeing all the smack talk that he levies, and last thing you want to give Kenny King is an ego boost, and this is certainly one. So these two are not done, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. And it's good to see Kenny with gold again. So
And we'll talk more about the title situation in Impact because Kenny King's win started off a trend that only ended in the main event. Marcus, with the Ultimate X match, though, did you have any overwhelming thoughts or emotions from it? Something that made you take heed or want to discuss?
certainly appreciated the Victor Kushida guy. But to your point, because when I came back, I didn't want to interrupt you. You was on a roll. I To your point, it was not the most dynamic of mind blowing X Division match. It had its high spots, this, that, and the third, but it felt more so on the mundane side of the matches we've gotten years prior. They obviously like to kick the show off real big with these to get the crowd real amped up, and I think it definitely had its moments, but there was a certain gear that's been hit in the past that I don't think was matched here. Like you said, maybe that's because a couple of new names in there. I think Angel stood out, and then they told that whole story about him being brought to his first Ultimate X when he was a kid by his dad, and him going like, "I'm gonna be in that one day," and that coming full circle. That was really cool. And the story about him basically still having some of those design, violent by design ways, if you will, of dirty tactics to kind of get the win. Didn't scrape out with it, but that was cool. Knight had his moments. It was great to see Jake something back. I feel like I've been calling for him sporadically on our talks about Impact because I think he's a name they could really do something with. So it's good to see him. But this Ultimate X match could have been better. It also was this thing where, like, and I'm glad it didn't happen, but the damn X damn near fell because the chains was coming off, but thankfully it didn't. And I think Kushida is a very interesting winner to line up for seemingly a new champ.
So we'll talk more about that because that's going to be a fun as hell match.
Oh yeah,
As far as the Ultimate X goes, I think Kushida is the right win because he's a fresh face, but also because I think whatever they do with the Ultimate with the X Division champion right now, and we'll get there in a second, I think is going to be hopefully a long-term thing. But even if it's not, it could still be interesting. What I would like to see is Impact really start to build up these groups that they're kind of hinting at. Like Kushida, Shelley, and Sabin are the new trio time splitters, right? The former tag team of Shelley and Kushida from New Japan. Now they're a trio of time splitters. But they're not really doing a lot with that yet, and I really want that to change. But we'll get more into the X Division here in a second. The Knockouts tag team titles were on the line next when MK Ultra. I don't know if they introduced them as that, but I just saw an Impact Twitter's account that they are in fact addressing Killer Kelly and Masha Slamovich as MK Ultra as a tag team. They took on the Coven. What were you saying, Marcus?
Yeah, that was the name that they came. You said because it harkens back to some like mind control stuff from the Russians.
Actually, the United States in the 1950s, they were trying to find out if not even so much not mind control, but telekinetics. I think like they were trying to find ways to unlock the human brain and see what capabilities it can develop, and all it really did was get a lot of people hooked on acid.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of course.
So they're now MK Ultra, and which is even funnier because Killer Kelly is from Portugal and Masha's from Russia. So like, they have no like. It's just, I find it funny that they have no ties to anything involved in the actual MK Ultra, but they are being touted on Twitter as a mindfuck. So that makes sense. The Coven, they lose the belts. MK Ultra wins. It's a solid match. They do a lot of great character work in this. Kylan King gets actually some opportunities to shine against Killer Kelly. Killer Kelly is really, I think, a wardrobe change away from being a star, like Jordan Grace level star. The way she interacts in a match is so dynamic and unique. She has this desire almost in her eyes when people are like about to hurt her, and like you can see it like as a fulfillment when someone does, like the way she kind of like claws at her
Yeah,
own face in lust, and like it's a great hook for a character.
you know what? It's like a lustful lost puppy.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird, but it's captivating. I know that look because she did the look when after the match when Masha first came to save her with the collar.
Mm-hmm.
And they got this unique. And speaking of puppy, that's kind of how it almost come off because Masha kind of treats her like this. Like if people talk all that I guess goth eroticness with Rhea Ripley, and to her credit, she knows how to play in a lot of that stuff. But these two, I'm like, yo, this is giving a particular energy that could really sell in a different type of way that I don't necessarily know if Impact wants to tap into or not. But yeah, they got some real different kind of energy. But Kelly, like Marsha gives off a different vibe, and Kelly is definitely somebody that's like, I don't know what's going on with this chick, but I am so here for
Yeah, they definitely do have a sapphic attraction almost. Maybe
it. Yeah.
bound by violence. Maybe it's the brutality that they're bonded by. Either way, they are a great tag team, and like I feel like Slamovich, like she came in with such an undefeated streak. She was built up well, but I never took her seriously with her goofy hair. And she had some good matches, but after the Jordan Grace thing, I was like, okay, what's next? And Killer Kelly kind of came in sliding right into a wall. Like what do we do with her? And they both have found a real rhythm as not just rivals, but as partners now. And I feel like their stock has hit an all time high. That being said, this does suck for Taylor Wilde. She just got the belts like 3 months ago. Um, I don't feel like she got enough of a reign, and I don't know what they're going to do with her next. I don't know what Kylan King's long term tenure with the company is going to be. Though that being said, I kind of would prefer her stick around and maybe let go of Jessica Havoc if we need a clear roster space. So just throwing that out
Hey,
there.
yeah,
Hey,
right.
heyo.
I appreciate them. We got a lot of we got a lot of teams in the company right now, and I'm digging that.
I am too.
Um, I like what they did with Taylor Wilde because I think she definitely needed to switch her character narrative up, and I think this cover thing has really brought out another more brutal side to her, which I appreciate. And aesthetic is good, and I think she's found some good grooves with Kyla King. Hopefully they keep them together, and it's kind of be a back and forth between them and what is it, MK12,
MK Ultra.
um, MK Ultra. So thank you. Um, MK Ultra because I think they're really good, two really good tag teams. I just think the Coven just ran into their match. I think, ironically enough and sadly enough, these two have kind of came in. These two teams have kind of come in and kind of supplanted what Decay used to be
Mm-hmm.
in terms of energy because um, Rosemary and now obviously according to Rush has kind of loosely separated herself from. I mean, always it's always it's always simpatico if you will, but she's seemingly no longer consistently running with Steve and then Black Taurus as that version of Decay, and she's kind of moved into her own little thing. And I feel like I said this before, I feel like it just worked better with Taya. Um, but this whole thing with Jessica Havett is just never really clicked for me. I think she's kind of been more of a weight anchor, if you will, kind of holding them back. And I feel like she almost needed to go to court and rush to switch things up because Rosemary was kind of just she was kind of just floating. So yeah, you know, like I said, maybe they could regain some of that momentum. To your point earlier about moving Jessica out of the way, there's some got to be some other place she could go or take a break or something. Maybe potentially go be a mom. I don't know. There's options. Put Rush with the young lady that
Jody
was
Threat.
brought in, Joni Threat. Thank you. and had them a tag team, and then had the three of these, them with MK Ultra and the Coven going at it for those belts. You know, keeping that the division hot and keeping that the tag belts relevant. You know, but I don't you don't Havoc is just not needed to me.
I agree. So let's move on to the Scott D'Amore Bully Ray tag team match. Darren McCarty came out as a special guest enforcer. He'd end up doing more and became the special guest referee later in the match. Um, so there were some storylines that were both real and wrestling related in this. Firstly, Steve Macklin got himself significantly hurt in Australia. I still don't know what happened to him. He seems to be like fine, but he needs to heal. Like whatever it was significant that he had to miss time, but it's not like he died. So I want to be clear about that. He's fine in that regard. He's out for some time though, and for what I don't, or with what I don't know. So he had to be replaced, and they brought in Cody Deaner to replace him. I'm a fan of Deaner. I just don't like Deaner as a heel. Deaner as a heel doesn't make a lot of sense to me. He's a very charismatic and fun and very positive type of personality when he's a hero, when he's a face. So seeing him as a heel, it's like, all right, he's kind of one dimensional and he's fine, but his wheelhouse is as a goofy face. That's where he soars. For some reason, they wrote out PCO from this. I think that may have been a last-second decision, and we'll get to that here in a bit. And they ended up having a surprise replacement for D'Amore. D'Amore ended Impact, or during Impact, I should say, not ended. During Impact, he made a call to somebody and hinted at a Team Canada reunion. And on the show, we got exactly that, as Eric Young returned to the company with, I think it was Johnny Cash, to start the theme song. It was only like a couple bars, like maybe a verse or two. And then it went into the Team Canada theme, which I was a big fan of. I love Team Canada. They're goofy little idiots, and I've always enjoyed them. They're like the heel version of the Hobbits from Lord of the Rings. They're just nutcases. And if you've ever seen the Team 3D Funeral, Marcus, they were like the stars of it. Especially when AMW was giving their eulogy for Team 3D, and they're like, we all know why Bully Ray, why did we turn heel and side up with Jeff Jarrett? First of all, it was for the money. And then all four of them with Scott D'Amore, they all have hockey sticks. It's A1, P.D. Williams, Eric Young, and Bobby Roode with Scott D'Amore. They all have hockey sticks. And they're like, we did it for the money. They all just start like in unison shouting out, money, while holding up their hockey sticks. And it's one of the funniest damn things I've ever seen. And then they cut to Jeff Jarrett, who's crying next to Gail Kim, going, for the money. For the money.
Man, look, man, anybody listening, I'm telling you right now, Lucha Underground got the best deaths. Impact got the best funerals.
Yeah. Like, they've literally made funerals a wrestling trend now. Because they would go on and do it again for the Aces and Eights, and it was not as good, but still very good. So this was a long match. How long was it? It was 12 minutes, give or take. I don't know if I need to see Bully Ray and D'Amore wrestle for 12 minutes. They did a good portion of the match. Like it wasn't like they weren't in there for a long time. And they had some spots. They did their thing. Bully yelled at D'Amore's mother. D'Amore did a great step-up heel kick. And I love step-up heel kicks. I think people need to do them more. Then there was A1, a member of the most well-known version of Team Canada, sitting ringside. So when things broke down and Khan got involved, that's when things kind of picked up. Also, Darren McCarty became the special guest referee. But Khan got involved after McCarty became the special guest referee randomly. And that's when A1 hopped the barricade and clotheslined Khan over it. And the fans actually popped for A1. Now, I'm a long-time Impact fan. Long time. It's probably been the one promotion I've watched more than anything. Like, combined. Like, if you put my years watching WWE, WCW, ECW, yeah, Ring of Honor. Like, I've not watched every show of Monday Night Raw or SmackDown in my 20, 30 years of watching and covering wrestling. I haven't watched every Ring of Honor show or even every WCW show, although I watched a lot at WCW. But I've watched just about every Impact show. So I'm very familiar with the product, historically speaking. And A1 never got over, ever. He had long, thin blonde hair. He had a great body, great look, but he didn't have a personality that anyone seemed to like. So he would always be the Team Canada member that would be the enforcer, even though Bobby Roode was technically the enforcer. Or he would be the guy that they would have lose matches in multi-man matches. Like his role wasn't that of a big-time personality. So to see him get a pop when he took out the former Ascension member Connor, now known as Khan, one of the funnier things to me, but also one of the more heartfelt things, because this show really did have a lot of historical significance tied into it that I don't think Impact as a company did enough highlighting, and we'll talk more about that with the Eddie Edwards and Frankie Kazarian match. But like having D'Amore and Young and A1 and all that, there was a lot of significant historical relevance with that group being Team Canada. And like they got a chance to celebrate in the ring together, like the three of them. And then, of course, Darren McCarty, former Detroit Red Wings legend. I don't know if he's a Canadian, though. I don't think he is. He is. Okay, he's from Burnaby, British Columbia, Canada. But he played for the Calgary Flames for a while, but he's most known for being a member of the Detroit Red Wings. So it was cool to see him there. I actually like his involvement. I would actually really love to see him get with team if they do a Team Canada reunion, having McCarty play like an actual enforcer role on the team, which is what he was in hockey. He was a defenseman. He wasn't a goon or a thug because like those are like just straight brawlers. But he was a defenseman with a primary focus on hitting people. Actually, he was a wing. Never mind, he was a wing. But he still wasn't a high-scoring wing. He was a very gritty player. I'm forgetting things about my hockey tenure in the late 90s, early 2000s. Uh-oh. So I would like to see McCarty have that kind of physical presence in any future Team Canada role. And if that ends up being a thing, I think this could be a very fun version of the stable, especially with the ending of the show, which we'll talk about, because I think they could do this both as a face or as a heel stable, depending on how they want to go forward with Alex Shelley as champion. But overall, I think the match was fine. I just wouldn't say that it was the most appealing match of the night if you are a, Peruso, AEW type of guy who expects, high quality bumping and superstar, super flips all the time. If you like a good story, this is a very good match. Margaret, what did you think about it?
Yeah, that's what this match was about. Story. I've been building this up amongst the whole the more bully thing ultimately, and thankfully neither one of them had to fall back out of the match because that really would have ruined it. Because that's essentially what this has been, even coming off of the whole bully and Tommy Dreamer thing. Because the whole thing is, obviously bullies come in and run amok. Who didn't see that coming? And it, essentially the more that brought him in. So, he kind of has to clean up his own mess here. And it was cool seeing the more get back in his bag. And for a minute, there, I'm like, oh shoot, because I didn't, necessarily watch that whole Team Canada run. So I'm like, oh shoot, Rude loaned him his jacket. But obviously that's that's the Moore's classic jacket that he wore during his run. I want Impact to release his theme music because I actually like it a lot. Um, but yeah, he came out. It was cool to see EY again and then bring back that whole Canada connection. And then, like you said, this wasn't supposed to be no technical masterpiece by any means. It did what it needed to do. It was cool seeing the more, get his stuff in, if you will. And yeah, Willie Ray got some comeuppance going through a table, uh, rightfully so. The thing about one, I guess, main critique is that for I think it was McCarthy. He was supposed to be a special enforcer, and he more came off like a pissed off valet. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, you're an enforcer. You don't need to go bitch to the ref about Connor. You can go put hands on him. That's the point. Like, go over there and put hands on his big ass. Like, so it helped when he turned into the referee, and then A1 came to deal with Connor. But yeah, this was, got done what it needed to get done. Like I said, Bully Ray got rightful comeuppance. And the more got to be appreciated by the hometown crowd, bring EY back for that, and then just bring the whole team Canada thing back and get some good crowd appreciation. So it was a good solid full circle moment all around.
It was. I would agree with that. So we move on to the X Division title match. I actually really like this match for the story it told. But again, it's not one of those. It's not going to tell a 40-minute epic where Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada somehow blend into one star figure and merge into the universe and explode into a rainbow cosmic collection of super moves and unique dynamics.
But Chad, it's 6 stars matches. We need 6 star matches all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah, I've never been a guy that grades matches based off of like how many moves you do, or what kind of moves you do. It's just what story you tell. And I think this was a good story. Saban came in against Leo Rush as somebody who was not medically cleared, but for some reason they still let him wrestle. So like that's a little dumb. But the whole start of it was great. Before Saban could even get set, Leo Rush attacks him, hits him with his finisher a few times in the ring. Saban kicks out of the first one, but not the second. And we have a new X Division champion in Leo Rush. And the thing is, like, this kind of gets said a lot when it comes to like Leo Rush and guys like Leo Rush. We're always looking for the next Rey Mysterio. You know, Mystico, aka Sin Cara, was supposed to be that. You know, then what was his name? Good Lucha
Kalisto.
things. Kalisto was supposed to be that. You know, guys like maybe Will Ospreay is that. And the thing is, like, sure, but I've always thought that Leo Rush, if he can be in the proper frame of mind, could be that. And I view Leo Rush as one of those guys currently on the Indies right now who has a high pro. I don't want to say he's a legendary indie guy because he has some time to go, but he's one of the few indie guys right now that if he comes into your company, wins a belt, that means something. Even a company as big as Impact. And I feel like Leo Rush coming in and winning the X Division title doesn't just help him look better, it elevates the belt. Because he's so dynamic and he encapsulates the idea of what an X Division wrestler should be so well. That, like, he's the guy. What would be 18 years ago? It would have been Bryan Danielson. You know, in 2005, if you had gotten Bryan Danielson come in and win the X Division title, that would have been a huge coup for you. And, you know, you can argue among yourselves if you want about, you know, is Leo Rush as good as Bryan Danielson? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that Leo Rush's profile right now is where it is. It elevates that belt even further. And I don't know if he's sticking around long term. But if he is, this should be a hell of a run. And if he's just setting up for a Chris Sabin win back, that's fine as well. Because now you get to add someone like Leo Rush, who I think has all the talent in the world, to the pantheon of champions that have held that belt. And that only helps bolster that belt as well as Leo Rush. And anyone who beats Leo Rush for that belt. So I think this is an A-plus move. What about you, Marcus?
Oh man, I'm right behind you. Everything you said, man. I'm a fan of Rush. I'm a fan of Saban, but I love this stride that I feel like Rush has been hitting. Obviously, he's had his ups and downs both in and out of the ring, but I really feel like this time around, him going to New Japan and just being brilliant there. Obviously, in the tag team, setting it on fire, and then he had a show out stint in Best of Super Juniors. I just feel like he's in a different gear. I feel like he's in a different headspace, a more, I think, what appears to be a more positive headspace, and he's just putting in the work. Showing the world why that he's one of the best going. Period. And I did not. This was the last thing I saw coming, but I thought it was brilliant because it don't just turn to the fact that Saban essentially set himself up for this in a way because I think he challenged him to a title match. But it also speaks to a certain level of urgency we always talk about. Like we just got through that conversation about all that stuff that Balor did to the Rollins only to let him stand there in the ring for 5 minutes and serenade the crowd. You've been jumping him for weeks. Now you got time to sit there and just be no. There was a level of urgency and cockiness and aggressive brilliance that Rush brought, and it just it told a story that Saban probably should have you know went ducked off and came back another night, but he didn't do that. Obviously, want to be a fighting champion. This whole thing about him finally getting that big number win, and setting a new standard for the division. And he got knocked off. He got knocked off bad. And I think it also tells a story of coming into this show. The narrative was more so around essentially Shelley being the transitional champion, not Saban.
Mm-hmm.
So you got that going into that too. And now, you got somebody like Saban, who's going to be hungry to get it back. But, Rush is not no easy go. And, I think he's one of the best ones that could play. And he does this in the ring too, with hitting the ropes all kinds of ways. He could play keep away for months with this. And he could be like a good nuisance the way, I guess, for some, Miguel was a bad nuisance. Uh, so, I'm digging it. Like I said, there wasn't a bad option here. And I think, to your point, like you said, when somebody like Rush comes in and win your title, and hopefully, we find out that he may be very well sticking around. Because I think he, obviously he did the tag league and then Super Junior. So this could be a good. I think this is, like you said, I think he's the perfect guy to represent the X division. Um, and I'm just looking forward to seeing what they do with it. I don't personally want him to be a transitional champion, but I also didn't want Saban to drop it. So, kudos to Impact for reeling the show, and we're going to get off into more of it, but reeling the show with, like, positive effort, if you will, because in the past, it's just been a lot of, like, dusty finishes and, like, BS wins that ultimately didn't mean nothing, and they didn't go past the shock moment that they had. I think this is set up, like I said, for some very intriguing impacts, because the minute we get to Thursday, it's going to be people coming out that don't want nothing but the smoke. They ain't going to want to talk. All they going to want to do is fight. So, yeah.
Should be interesting to see too. So,
Yeah.
all right, we move on to the multi-man tag team match. It was Moose and Brian Myers versus Subculture versus Rich Swann and Sam Callahan versus the champions ABC, which is Ace Bay Club, I think is what they're doing. Members of the Bullet Club. They've had a decent title reign. I've had some really good matches, though I think as a tag team, I don't like them as a group. I would like to see Bay kind of venture off on his own and maybe turn face while keeping Ace heel and letting them feud, because I think they could add a lot of value to the X division. Myers and Moose have nothing in common. They were slammed together, and Swan and Callahan, they're like this was like maybe, I don't want to say this is the worst tag match I've ever seen at Slammiversary, but Marcus, it was not good. Like, it was fine. Like, it's hard to say like, oh yeah, it was terrible. Like, it wasn't, but it also wasn't very good.
It was forgettable, entertaining chaos.
Yeah, I think that's it made you watch, but
Yeah.
it didn't make you care. But I do like where they're going with the win, because Subculture got the win. That's another New Japan group, just like Leo Rush, another New Japan affiliate. So Subculture gets the win. Things are going fine. They're building up to the idea of having ABC take on the Rascals, which I think is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, that's sick.
And I also like the idea of seeing what Subculture can do, because Flash Morgan Webster is one of those guys, like almost like Leo Rush, like to have him in your company, kind of a big deal. Like, he's got a lot of upside. Not that Mark Andrews doesn't, but we're still trying to forget Mandrews. So like,
which actually, like, yeah, I feel like this is almost a long term. We're sorry
yeah.
for that whole deal. Him coming out as Mandrews on a damn skateboard, only being there to essentially hit the shooting star press. I mean, he had his moments, but he never got I think, the shine that he could have gotten if given the opportunity. So I think this is brilliant. It feels like a lot of people are coming in and getting some um, kind of revamped shine from bad Impact days of old. We'll get to all this later, but yeah, it was good. Like I said, it was chaos personified. I think this is one of those situations, if they want to continue doing these, putting all these teams together for these tag title situations, I think they could benefit from taking a page out of WWE's book and run a tag team match gauntlet instead of this soup mix that they usually like to do. You know?
I like that idea. I like that idea a lot. You could do a gauntlet match that would be a lot more entertaining. So
Yeah.
honestly, what they probably should have done is they should have probably had dropped Kevin Knight and Alan Angels from the show, even though I know they're really trying to build up both guys for future success. You should have moved Swan and Callahan to the X division, the Ultimate X match, and just had this
And
be a
Callahan?
Swan and Callahan. Yeah,
Mm.
I think you could have had a lot of fun with Callahan being a hardcore dude in an Ultimate X match, and then maybe have Moose not be on a wrestling aspect of the show, but like be a part of the show in some way. Maybe start building up the idea because like I think King and Swan, not Swan, King and Sheldon Jane and Moose would be like the great start to a really enticing stable. And I think you could do something with that there, or you could have Moose do commentary. Maybe Moose gets involved in the Scott D'Amore Bully Ray match. Like, there's a lot of things you could do with Moose. I don't think you needed Brian Myers on the show at all. You could have cut him completely, and then I would have just had Subculture versus ABC in a tag match. Dropped a minute from the X Division match, a minute from the Knockouts match, a minute from the D'Amore match, cut a minute from the Eddie Frankie match, a minute from Trinity Perazzo, and a minute from Alex Shelley, and put those 10 extra minutes into that match with Subculture and ABC, and I think you have yourself one of the greatest tag team matches of all time. So, just simple ways to make things better, man. Just simple ways to make things better. Speaking of making things better, don't bring your wife to a wrestling show if you don't want to see her getting into some heavy violence. Eddie brought his, Frankie brought his, and they smushed together. Now, before I was talking about how this show had historical significance I felt was underrepresented and underappreciated, one of those things is that this was a Killer Kowalski kind of blood feud. Both men trained under Kowalski at different times during Kowalski's life. And Kowalski was from the area that they've wrestled in at Slammiversary, which is, I think, Ontario, I think they were at. So, like, there was, like, a lot of historical significance with Killer Kowalski in this match, and I feel like they didn't do enough to really highlight that. It was a sub-storyline to, like, Eddie and Frankie's feud, which is based around the fact that Eddie and Frankie are different types of vets. And that doesn't sit well with Frankie or with Eddie. And I feel like they really could have done a lot of work with both these guys being more incorporated with the Killer Kowalski of it all, besides it just being more of a subtle passing that Eddie mentioned once, I think. I think you could do like an entire tournament or like a cup or something where you you go to the Kowalski family, like we want to do a Killer Kowalski championship or not championship, but like a Killer Kowalski tournament. And or like have like a Killer Kowalski championship cup for winning the tournament. And I think you could have done something around that with these two heading into this match. And I feel like it was a missed opportunity to not better highlight it. But the match itself was really good, which is, not at all surprising when you think about the talent that both Eddie Edwards and Frankie Kazarian have. But it's a little surprising considering Eddie's 40 and Frankie's 45, I think. Like, these are not young dudes. But they're still going out there and throwing hams. Frankie's gonna be 46. Eddie's 39. So like they're not Jericho 56 plodding around the ring yet, but they're not young. And they put on arguably I think the match of the night. It was great to see Tracy Brooks get in the ring. She threw a nasty, not a nasty, because I really, recontextualizes like the veracity of the clothesline. It was a very stiff clothesline that she threw on Alicia. And it wasn't like, she wasn't trying to be like a dick about it. Like, it wasn't like she was trying to like give her a receipt or anything. She just threw a clothesline and like it ended up being a bit more stiffer than I think either intended. Because like you can see Tracy shaking it out subtly when she thinks the camera's not on her. Like it hurt. Eddie ends up getting the win due to some shenanigans. Frankie had him in the, not the cloverleaf, the chicken wing. Everything was going according to plan for Frankie, but the referee was out. The referee gets back in. Eddie ends up getting the opportunity to hit him with the the Boston Knee Party, and Eddie gets the win. I think this feud continues on. I think we see Tracy Brooks get back in the ring for a one-time match against Eddie and Alicia, and if that's the case, I'm very happy with how this ended. But if it's not the case, I feel like, okay, like we should be doing a little bit more with Frankie, but we also should be doing more with Eddie, so it's like, what do you do? Marcus, thoughts on the Eddie and Frankie match?
I mean, to your point, I think if they're not gonna put either one of them back into the world title picture or in the X situation, to your point, I think doing a quote unquote cup of some sort would be a great idea, Nick, and then you can run it back in a lot of ways, like what we got um, in the Owen Hart Cup recently when they kind of basically ran it back between Hobbs and Starks.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a solid idea.
My thing went out. But yeah, I like the match. Like you said, probably one of the best of the night. If not the best, because they went out there and shined. It was great seeing Tracy again. And Impact also has another point of story that they could have told. Impact has a very good little streak of doing these uh, bring your wife to work matches. It's a good little streak of to bring the wife to work matches. The last one we seen, I think, was what Aldis and James.
Mm-hmm.
And tore it up, so they got a good little streak with that. But yeah, this was some damn good stuff. Even with what I appreciate the most, they didn't let the chicanery of the match overtake it. They, as much chicanery as was going on, they made sure they did just as much wrestling, which I appreciate. And like you said, these ain't no necessarily young, spry 20-year-olds, but they come off like it when they get in the ring and go. So, like I said, I don't think this is over. This is like it is up 2-0 right now with Kazarian, and I think he's definitely gonna want to get that last rubber match in to prove once and for all who's the better man. And like I said, we may very well see the wives get more involved in a potential match with a stipulation of some kind. So, looking forward to seeing what they do with that.
And that takes us to the first of two major title matches, the Knockouts Championship. Trinity did some press for the show. I think she was interviewed by one of the New York outlets, New York Times, New York Post, New York something or other. So like that's a big deal. I don't know if it's going to help get the show more views or anything like that, but it's still good to see. She came out, Deanna Project came out with someone playing violin. Her entrance wasn't that great. It was fine. But the match itself was pretty solid. The ending was a little bit wonky. Trinity hits Deanna with a move. I forget what it was. It was like a sit-out something or other. And then she goes to pin her. But then, like, if I remember correctly, it was like 1 and then 2, and then she pulls Deanna into a submission hold. I think it was Deanna's submission hold, or maybe it's... No, she just does an armbar. It must have been Trinity's submission hold. I've seen it a lot. It's like this weird inverted key lock. And it's nice. I like it. I just don't remember who I saw it do it first. But Trinity's now using it. And she locks Deanna in, and she gets the win. Great. We all knew this was going to happen. Trinity was too big of a signing for them to not put the belt on her eventually. The ending felt a little bit herky-jerky, if you will. Just kind of like, oh, okay, I thought, because it was clear she had the pin, but then she just randomly goes into a submission hold, and I feel like the kick out that Deanna didn't do should have happened, which would have made more sense for them to then go into the submission, which I don't remember Deanna kicking out at. Marcus, thoughts on Trinity not only winning the title, but the ending of the match and the match itself as a whole?
Yeah, I got to go back and look at it. But I definitely appreciate them. Like you said, it was kind of only right that they, the biggest signing, they actually built up to it, and Trinity is somebody that's worthy of it. So it's great to see her get that shine and get to shine on her own terms, because she's clearly getting to have full autonomy over, what she does, how she presents herself, and stuff of that sort, which I know is, a very big thing for her right now, with the decision that she made to even come to Impact. So that's cool to see. Deanna is it's probably been one of the most consistent things on the roster since she first came in the company. So she, is already a certain tier. But yeah, to your point, I do remember it being kind of wonky. and a little bit, and there's certain things too because Deanna is certain. At this point is a veteran knockout champion. She's been it 3 times, and with all the wins and opponents she's beaten, and certainly essentially what she's like, what it feels like 4-0 against Jordan Grace.
I think so.
Um, with as tough matches as those, where she really should be somebody that's like, somebody, I guess if you compare to WWE, somebody that'll kick out of a widow's peak or something like that, at her stage, she should definitely be somebody that you kind of have to put a level of something together to beat, and maybe they potentially saving that for a rematch, but it was still good. I think they can run it back and have more elevated chemistry. So, because I think this was their first time locking up, right? So,
I think so. At least one-on-one.
yeah, and that was another theme of the night. We got a lot of situations where a lot of opponents was locking up for the first time, which I also appreciated. So that was cool. But yeah, outside like you said, sometimes the finishes a bit kind of head tilting. But other than that, it's cool to see Trinity get that win. But we already know Deanna is not going to lead this line down. She's not like she's never lost, and she could be looking to get that back. But I already know somebody that's going to be first in line because of what this particular win means for a certain stipulation that happened when it came to Deanna being champion. So.
Who do you think is going to be first in line for Trinity after a possible Deanna rematch?
I would imagine Grace, because she couldn't go for it as long as Paraso was champion, right?
Correct. I don't even know if Grace is still at the company though.
Ah,
I think
yeah,
her
that's
contract
good.
expired, and I don't know if she resigned. Now she may have. Because here's the thing. Right now, with the way the two big companies are going, like WWE and AEW, if the money's close, why wouldn't you take the exposure and the proper bookings over the, you know, showing up on whatever the Friday night collision, is that what it is? Or is that the
Saturday is
Saturday show?
Collision, Friday is Rampage, and Wednesday is Dynamite.
Okay. Like, why would you show up on Rampage, right? Why would you go from doing headlining pay-per-views to opening Rampage? I don't get that. If the money's close, and you know it is, because like not everyone's making 500, 600, 700K a year. Why wouldn't you prioritize the way you're booked? Because that's what's your value. And like the thing is, like so many fans hate Hulk Hogan's, politicking and all that. But the thing is, like, the reason why those guys had 20-year careers on top is because they did that. They prioritized how well they were booked and how protected they were. It's the only reason Jericho still has value. It's the only reason CM Punk still has value. It's the only reason Bryan Danielson still has value. It's the reason why Brian Cage, who's about the same age as Bryan Danielson, doesn't. Brian Cage is an also-ran who's a former Impact World Champion. And why is he an also-ran? Because he's been allowed to be misused because he thought he was going to be this big deal in AEW. And then you look at WWE, and so many of their guys, unless they're Vince's favorites, often get left out of the shuffle. So if you're Jordan Grace, why would you even risk your career by going to some other place just because they can pay you a little bit more? I don't get that. But
I guess it's the big. I guess you think. I guess in their mind they um, at this stage in the game they feel like they're a big fish in a medium-sized pond, which would be Impact, and then they would be a medium growing into the big fish in the big pond going to WWE, AEW. Can't necessarily see WWE straight up and down because we saw what happened with Mandy,
mm-hmm.
and we know that Grace, and to her credit, and rightfully so, she has alternative streams of income. And as far as AEW, like I don't know. I mean, Taya came in supposed to be the big boom, and that hasn't necessarily been the biggest thing. They could have put the title on her and gone on the Naomi route like they did, like going what they doing with Naomi, and they didn't do that. She lost the belt, and then immediately the match became forgettable. Even more so because somebody came out and took advantage of a stupid open challenge and knocked off the chick that she couldn't even beat. So, but then they got the setup where essentially you could bounce around from three different titles because you got the TNT Championship. Oh, I'm sorry, the TBS Championship, the AEW Women's, and then you got the ROH Women's. So now I also don't like necessarily when people come in and go straight for a title, lose, and then just immediately go for another title. That just it makes sense, but it comes off a bad taste to me. I'm like, what makes you think you can go over here and get it if you couldn't get it over here?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that might be the set. It's one of those things again where they finally get to, I guess, get quote unquote mainstream attention because WWE and AEW are the kind of big kahunas. But we saw what happened with Moose, and I think Grace still has some stuff to do in Impact. Like I said, it would stick in my craw to be 4-0 against somebody like that, and then for that stipulation to be the way it is, and then just her to kind of almost duck Deanna to get to the title, be like, oh yeah, couldn't duck Deanna, and I couldn't, essentially go for another shot while she was still champion. So I go out to somebody I think I can beat that's smaller, and I feel like I can beat Naomi. So I feel like it's some business to be taken care of there, but you never know. She may want to go off and I don't know, permanently compete in competitions. Who knows?
And we'll find out. Like eventually, like we'll eventually find out what's going on with them, specifically with Jordan Grace. Moving on though to the main event, Alex Shelley took on Nick Aldis. Hell of a match. Nice story told. Like the outfit for Shelley. That's a bit of a new look. So overall, good match. The whole narrative was Shelley can't compete with Aldis. Shelley wasn't on his level. Even on commentary, not Hammer Fam.
Hammer Fam. That's a new one. That's good.
Is that not his name?
No, it's Hannafin, but I
Oh,
like Hammer.
there's yeah, little I care about that fucker.
Exactly.
Rewald,
Yeah.
him.
Ray Walt, yeah.
Raywald. He even said like those who can do in regards to or those who can't do teach in regards to Shelley trying to hype up who he is. And like I don't know if it was done tongue in cheekly or to help set up the ending, but it felt like an unnecessary move. That being said, the end result was the right one in my opinion, and we end up finding out why later. Shelley gets the win, and we find out post show. I think even after the tapings yesterday for the upcoming Impact, that all this is done with the company already. He came back in like what, February, March maybe, and he's already gone. Apparently, there's interest from the WWE about signing him and making him a producer. And listen, Nick Aldis is 36, right? He's not old by any means. He can make good money in this business. If he actively goes to the WWE and becomes an agent in this prime of his career, I don't ever want to see him wrestle another match again. I will feel personally offended by him basically taking that offer when he has so much value as a headliner. And like he even said, one of the things he made mention was that when he shows up, like it's an expectation that he challenges for the world title. Like that's where he is in his life. That's how the world view him. So it's one of those things where if it comes down to that, if you let him go, or if he leaves because he's thinking long term and maybe doesn't want to wrestle anymore, then don't come back to wrestling. Like, don't do the thing so many people do when they go to the WWE and then they end up getting fired and they're like, all right, what do I do now? You have like 4 or 5 great years left before you break down physically. Don't waste them as a producer. Don't waste them playing, setup for Rampage. I don't want to see you serving as QT Marshall's underling. Nick Aldis is a genuine headliner in this industry, and I feel like if he goes anywhere where he doesn't automatically enter the world title scene and stay there, it's a waste of a career. Because he will have done this yet again by leaving TNA to go to basically floating around for a while, then going to the NWA, coming back to Impact, leaving Impact, and then going back to the NWA, and now once again coming back home to Impact, and then leaving Impact again. This dude is the quintessential version of woulda, coulda, shoulda. He was the headliner for the NWA, but the NWA is not anything to brag about. I don't know if he would have stayed in Impact if he had a longer contract, or if he had won the belt and then would have signed up to do more shows for Impact. I don't know if that would have been the difference maker, but I do know that if he goes and becomes an agent, that'll be a waste of a career. Not only is Nick Aldis leaving, but Ziggy Dice is leaving as well, which means the tandem with him and Johnny Swinger's over, which breaks my heart because those guys were hilarious together. Marcus, any thoughts on the ending, or not the ending, but the match as a whole with Shelley and Magnus, and the departures of Aldis and Dice?
Dug the match. Never came into the match wanting Aldis to win. He shouldn't have won, and maybe that's the reason why he is essentially leaving. Because in his mind, he should be, he's a headline. He should be world champion. But it's because I think he said something in the pre-match promo about he represents history and legacy um, in the industry, and I'm like that's cool, and you can talk about that with regards to what you did in NWA and all that. That's fine, that's great. Kudos, deserve all that credit. But Alex Shelley represents history and legacy within Impact,
Mm-hmm.
and he's the guy that helped you learn the difference between a headlock and a headlight. So let's not sit up here and pretend like you somehow did the student became the master. That's not how this went. Like, cause Shelley's had, more memorable tag team matches than you had as a world title run. Let's not play those games. And whatever other titles that he won in the company, even matches that he had in the company that was more memorable than that world title run. And no fault of his own, because that was kind of out of his hands. He did what was asked of him. But let's not pretend like that world title run was anything to brag about. So certainly the right decision. Like I said, guns up, and I appreciate the story that they told going into the match. Him watching his friend kick off the night, losing the way that he did, that potentially rattling his confidence a little bit. Him not even saying anything to Gia backstage, and essentially coming into this match being a veteran, and then having to put up with the fact that he's supposed to be some transitional champion to a guy that he put on. So I think bringing that full circle was great. Obviously, the ending of the match. The Iron Man of Impact is back in the fold. And I can't honestly say that I really cared. It was cool to see Nick come back and like so many over the last few years, I see a lot of names that we've seen come back and, um, bring some pay it forward, coming off of the Impact history like Christian Cage and the Hardys and some other names or what have you. So it was cool to see him in that regard. But I'm like, once they put it on Shelley, unless it was going to be Alexander or they was going to keep it potentially on Macklin. I never wanted Magnus. Aldis to get it, and I'm not the biggest guy to be like, oh no, they're losing them. I'm like, everything we just talked about, the roster's packed right now. The possibilities are endless. They shook things up with the show results in general, and I don't think he's going to necessarily be missed with everything we got going on, because I don't think between Alexander and I would have married a myriad of other people that there's going to be, a lack of contenders. But it's also, like to your point about Dice and his tandem with
Swinger.
Swinger. Thank you. Swinger is going to be missed, but maybe for him, he feel like he can do more and he wants to do more than potential comedy. So kudos that if that's what he wants to do. It's wish him the best of luck.
I think what Impact lacks right now is genuine headliners that, if they're on your card, can truly bring in a crowd on their name alone. And you can't do that with 40, 50, 60,000. You can do it with 2 to 5,000. And I feel like Aldis, granted, he's not going to bring you in 10,000 per show. He's not CM Punk. He can bring you in 15, 2,500. Like that can absolutely be a thing. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea. I know he's not the most dynamic worker, but he is, I think, in my opinion, a star. And not to have him involved, I do think is it's going to be a lacking situation. I feel like they could have been better with him, even if he's not in the head of the at the top of the card as champion. But we'll see what happens. This is going to be a developing situation as we go forward.
Real quick, do you think that's a contributing factor though to why he may have made the choice to leave? Because in his mind, he should be that guy at this stage in his career.
No, I don't. I feel like if they had actually signed him, like if they sat down and like, listen, like what do you want to do? You want 2 years, 3 years, 6 months? Like tell us what you want to do. If he would have been like, I want 3 years in the title, they would have been like, we will absolutely do that because you are a guy who has credibility. You have great matches, whether it's at All Out or no All In, whether it's in the NWA. Like you've had great matches. Like we know that. We know it's capable. When you have, he's not Shawn Michaels or like AJ Styles or even Sting, where like he can have a great match with anyone. He needs the right dance partner, but there are enough dance partners out there in this company that he can have banger after banger. But I feel like he wanted to keep his options open, as he tends to do. And with
Yeah.
Impact specifically, this is a trend that they keep running through with guys where it's like, we'll bring them in for 3 months or 4 months or 5 months and then they're gone. Like, think about when they brought in Jonah.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I do think Aldis was never going to be a long term option for them, which is why I think they went with Aldis, not Aldis, which is why I think they went with Shelley as champion. When Josh Alexander got hurt, I do think the original plan was probably, hopefully, the idea of bringing in Alexander to take on Aldis at Slammiversary to put over Alexander. But that obviously isn't the case. However, that being said, as the show ends, we find out that Josh Alexander is in fact back. He's healthy, cleared to wrestle. And now it's going to be Alexander Shelley at some point in the near future, which I think heading forward will end up happening at probably Bound for Glory. Marcus, any thoughts on Alexander coming back?
I love it. It's brilliant. I'm glad he's back. I'm glad he's, 100% back healthy. Like I said, he's been one of the, best things that's come along the company in years. Really seeing somebody build themselves up through the ranks to become a real champion and a stalwart in that company. And it's great to see. And, obviously he was going to have unfinished business no matter who was champion. But he also has, and I would imagine, I hope they get back to it eventually when he's back on healthy. He definitely has some unfinished business with Magna, but it's really interesting with Shelley because obviously we know he was one of the guys that he beat while he was champion. So also bringing things full circle. Great story to tell. Like now the shoe's on the other foot, and I'm the guy. That's holding the title and not challenging. And there's the whole thing of like you couldn't beat me then. What makes you think you can beat me now? I can play that whole thing. There's so many. It's just something you could fall into, and then just let the wrestling take the rest of the other way. So to your point, definitely should do it at Bound for Glory. A lot of room and shows in between then to bring in some other potential things. And yeah, it's just good to see Alexander back because I would imagine he wanted to he worked on a Cena type level to get back because that he could have been definitely been out longer. But yeah,
I will be very interested to see what they do with Alexander. One of the things I'm really hoping for, truthfully, is putting Alexander with Eric Young and Demore maybe, and maybe McCarty, and reforming Team Canada with Alexander at the front of it. And I think if you do that, now granted, like maybe not involve Demore because like the evil heel manager, like not manager, but head of the company, so overdone. It's so overdone. You need a 20-year birth before you even try it again. But having young Alexander, maybe Cody Dean returns and joins them because he's Canadian, and having like an actual Team Canada revival, I think that'd be noteworthy, especially if it's behind Alexander alongside Eric Young. I think that's the way to go. And I think you can start off doing them as faces, but I think ultimately having a heel Team Canada with Alexander at the forefront could be very exciting for the company. I think the group could be Shelley's claim to fame. Even if they end up taking the belt from him, I think it will do wonders for Shelley as a headliner to have him have that heel stable to have to deal with on a nightly basis. Because heel stables really make face champions better. But Marcus, would you like to see a return of Team Canada with a different lineup?
I wouldn't mind it at all. Like I said, the way that they put a lot of great possibilities together with these tandems and then groups, I think is really interesting. And going into these upcoming impacts is going to be real interesting to see exactly what we get from that perspective. The roster is stacked. Um, but real quick, do we know what's been going on, or if anything, with Bobby Roode?
Last
Speaking
I
of team,
heard about Bobby Roode, he had to undergo another neck surgery.
mm,
I want to say. I don't know if he's ever going to wrestle again. Truthfully,
mm,
I really don't. I'm concerned about that in regards to like what is he going to be after this neck surgery. But I wouldn't
yeah,
be surprised if he's eventually released, and if that's the case, I think people would absolutely um, bring in Impact into bring him into Impact. I mean, so I think that could be a lot of fun, even if he's on a limited work kind of basis, like with Bully Ray. Bully Ray can't do a lot. I think that's been obvious from his matches, but he can still be enough that I think people will be excited about. Excited about seeing him back. So I do hope to see Bobby recover from this. I'm gonna double check actually because I think that's important that we get the right information. Bobby
yeah.
Roode.
I just think he'd be a brilliant return, man. Some kind of way, somewhere. Like I feel like how how Madison is the got to always come back pass as like one of the women in the Impact. I feel like Storm got that same pass for the men,
Mm-hmm.
where you could and Rude and then play the Team Canada element. You can also play him being a former world champion element, or you could do a quick build money reunion and have him go up against some of these young bucks, or run them and the guns back for a special. I think it's a lot of endless possibilities, but I feel like what's the old adage with WWE? I feel like they don't have anything for him. What they gonna do? Throw him back with Dolph? That's come on,
It's not great. So on May 12th of this year, it was reported that um, he had undergone another neck surgery. Uh, Rude, who celebrated his 46th birthday on Thursday, was spotted in Birmingham, Alabama this week. And it was believed that he was visiting Andrews Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center for a checkup for his neck. But Rude took to Instagram today to reveal that he underwent another fusion surgery on his neck, which will push back his potential in-ring return once again. Rude thanked Dr. Andy Cordover and his wife Deanne, or is it Deanne, and wrote, "Another trip around the sun and another trip to Birmingham, Alabama. Quite a way to celebrate my birthday. Had the C4 and 5 cervical fusion to go along with the C5 and 6 fusion back in November. Most importantly, it was a success thanks to the man himself, Dr. Andrew Cordover, and the first class staff here at Andrews Sports Medicine. Big thanks to Deanne for making it through the process. Underwent the next surgery. Rude was lying. So basically, it looks like he's out for a while. Then again,
yeah,
he could
man.
pull a Super Cena and come back next week, right? Uh,
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but then obviously you'll be far more of an expert on it than me. But when you start saying the word fusions, I just like, that's what you're talking about, shaky ground right there. That's a lot to go through, um, for the neck anyway. It's a very precarious position. Even if it's done correctly, it's still, real tedious. But sucks to hear that because he's been such a consistent guy over the years. But good luck to him. Hope he does, get to wrestle again. And like I said, feel like he'd be better served at this stage in the game. At certainly an impact in WWE, starting to get that appreciation. I feel like he get the same level of appreciation and ability to perform the way that James did when she came back. Because if you go back to WWE, he's got like what he can't. The theme song's been dead for a very long time now,
mm-hmm.
and essentially, as fickle as the crowd is, they've fallen in love with Cody and Seth's theme, so his is out. And like I said, what they can't potentially throw him in the world titles pitch. I mean, you could, but you'd have to build him up with the audience, and then what you gonna do? Throw him back with Dolph? When's the last time we seen Dolph on screen? So yeah, I don't feel like I just feel like it's more options than Impact. But first and foremost, I prefer the guy to be healthy. So up to him.
We'll see what happens with Rude long term. It's definitely going to be an uphill battle for him to ever get back in the ring. But it's not Stone Cold came back,
Impact.
at nearly
Yeah,
60.
Yeah, we got Edge, Bryan, Paige is back ish.
Yeah,
She don't do
Bryan
a
was
ton.
more for his head, but Paige is a great 1-to-1 in terms of
Yeah,
comparison. So, we'll see. He might be able to come back. I know Angle had a few neck fusions. So, very easily, we
yeah.
could see more Rude.
Any people listening to this that was born in the early to mid to later 2000s, when that man say he wrestled with a broken freaking neck, it's not a punchline.
Yeah,
It's real.
it's not
So
hyperbole.
yeah, and as Chad has retweeted and shout out to Jutsu, if you missed the Perk Angle era, I didn't even know it was a thing until years after the fact. You missed out on something special, and he was special before that, but that was a different gear. So, but between Kurt's neck and his knees, he was a miracle even when he was in his prime. Honestly.
Mm-hmm. You're not wrong. So we'll see what happens. As for the show, I think that's about it. Unless Marcus, you had anything else you want to touch on?
No, good stuff, man. Slammiversary is consistently one of their best shows, bar none. I always look forward to it. I remember that years ago now, um, when you had that great interview with Jared. I remember you asked about the whole thing about why Slammiversary wasn't necessarily the big show and it was Bound for Glory and that whole deal. But regardless of that, I feel like it's the second biggest show. It always feels like a big deal. Always get the matches, and I feel like even the ambiance a lot of times is good. So they deliver, man. But they've been delivering. I feel like all year. I feel like they've been nailing it for a while now, and because they've mixed stuff up here, certainly with the match results in a good way, with title changes, no, nonetheless, that they set up some very interesting impact coming up. And if you've been tuning out of Impact for a hot second, I think this is a good time to tune back in.
I agree. I agree completely. So with that being said, we're gonna wrap it up. We'll be back next week to talk more wrestling. I'm sure SummerSlam's coming up. We'll have to talk about that eventually. Hopefully not anytime soon. So we'll wrap it up today. The website's wrestling. Oh, Real Nerd Corp. There we go. RealNerdCorp.com. RealNerdCorp.com. We are on Instagram. Nope, we're on Twitter. Let's do this again because I'm out of rhythm. The website's realnerdcorp.com, RealNerdCorp.com. We're on Twitter at NERDCRP. Marcus, you can be found on Twitter at ParadoxKid, ParadoxKid.
That's me.
You can also find him on his other podcast, The True Penny Show, TruePennyShow. They talk about a lot of foreign wrestling, mostly Japanese stuff, mostly GLEAT, sometimes New Japan, and other stuff. Check them out. They're good. They're good. They're good. You can find me on Twitter, Chad Nerdcorp, ChedNerdCorp, and on the Instagram at Chad's Photo Hut, ChesphotoHut. I'm going to be uploading a lot of not personal, that sounds weird, but I'm going to be uploading some non-wrestling photos to my account here in a little bit. Probably tonight, maybe tomorrow, we'll see. Stuff from the Columbus Impact tapings. I went and saw Yellow Card, the band. So, some stuff that I think might be cool to see visually. Not even if you're a fan of the stuff, just I think I got some cool shots.
The boys out here seeing the world, people.
Yes, he is. So we'll be back next Monday around 10:30, 11-ish. We don't really rely on times anymore. We used to. No, not so much. So for Marcus Green, I'm Chad Pardo. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for giving us a chance. Remember, as always, to watch more wrestling. And Marcus, take us home.
Good night.